An 80-year-old farmer in Ohio showed me a diesel engine block that had 0 cylinder wear in 40 years of daily use. He opened his toolbox and pointed to a small, dusty bottle sitting in the corner. A $2 tube of liquid graphite. That is it. Why did no one tell you this exists? My name is Noah Miller. For 30 years, I watched my vehicles slowly tear themselves apart from the inside out. Same ticking lifter, every winter morning. Metal shavings in the drain pan. Is this just how it is now? I am going to show you exactly how a forgotten technique changes the physics of engine friction forever. The truth behind engine wear comes down to exactly what is missing from your oil. Its origins are far older than the combustion engine itself. This method was quietly pushed aside decades ago. The modern alternative sits on the shelf at your auto parts store for $30. It offers a temporary band-aid for a permanent design flaw. The people manufacturing your engine rely entirely on that flaw. That is the part the industry needs you to discover last. I thought I understood why this worked. Then I took a closer look at how carbon behaves inside a hot cylinder. I realized I had only seen half of it. Engine wear happens through a very specific mechanical process. You pour standard synthetic oil into the crankcase. The oil pump pushes that fluid up to the top of the engine block. The liquid creates a thin film between moving steel parts. Think of it like sliding a heavy wooden dresser across a hardwood floor. You put felt pads under the corners to prevent scratching. The oil acts exactly like those felt pads. It provides a cushion between the piston rings and the cylinder walls. Modern synthetic oils are formulated to break down at specific heat thresholds. The manufacturers prioritize arbitrary emissions targets over absolute lubrication. The chemical additives evaporate under high pressure. The felt pads wear thin. You end up with metal scraping directly against metal. You feel a sluggish response when you step on the gas pedal. You see a dark, metallic sludge collecting at the bottom of your oil pan. That is your engine literally dissolving into dust. The industry response involves selling you thicker oils and expensive chemical stabilizers. The product treats the symptom. The condition creating that symptom remains completely unchanged. The extreme heat and pressure still destroy the protective layer. Imagine a sliding glass door jumping off its track. Pouring soap on the track makes it slide easier for a few days. The door remains fundamentally broken. The soap washes away. The graphite particles operate on a completely different mechanical level. They bond directly to the porous surface of the steel. The material fills in the microscopic valleys on the metal surface. The friction drops to absolute zero. The graphite molecules align themselves like microscopic plates of armor. They slide over one another with zero resistance. The extreme heat inside the combustion chamber actually hardens this protective layer. This exact condition makes this traditional material stronger. You hear a smoother idle. You feel a sharper acceleration curve. The temperature gauge stays dead center even on the hottest days of summer. The engine runs exactly the way it was originally designed to run. The property of graphite making this work has been documented since before the Second World War. It sits in every materials science textbook. The industry ignored it because there was absolutely no money in a permanent fix. The industry buried this out of sheer economic necessity. A one-time $2 fix produces zero recurring revenue. Dealerships rely on service center profit margins to survive. Engine replacements and major overhauls keep the lights on. That is all this is. I saw the proof firsthand on a working farm in Holmes County. An Amish craftsman was servicing a massive diesel generator. He poured a dark mixture directly into the crankcase. He explained the exact ratio his grandfather taught him. I went home and looked up the thermal properties of colloidal graphite in a 1948 technical report by the Society of Automotive Engineers. The documentation confirmed everything he said. The material withstands temperatures that vaporize modern synthetic oils. The facts are entirely verifiable. Up until now, I have been talking about prevention. What I am about to describe is entirely different. This is what you do when the damage is already starting to show. Keep listening. Take a moment and think about your own vehicle. Have you ever noticed a slight hesitation when you press the gas pedal on a cold morning? Does your engine do this thing where the oil turns pitch black just 2 weeks after a change? Have you ever noticed a faint ticking sound that disappears once the engine warms up? If you said yes to even one of those questions, stay right here. Your engine is currently eating itself alive. This process is happening in your cylinders right now while you are watching this. Every week you wait is another layer of metal shaved off your piston rings. Think about that gritty feeling on your fingers when you rub used motor oil between them. That grit is the physical remains of your camshaft. That smell of burnt carbon seeping through your dashboard vents is the symptom of a failing system. The physical evidence is undeniable. You change your oil every 3,000 miles. You buy the premium synthetic brand in the silver bottle. You feel a sense of security when you pull out of the garage. For 11 months, the engine sounds fine. You think the expensive additives are doing their job. Then, the following winter, you hear that familiar metal-on-metal knocking sound return. The false hope collapses. The dealerships rely entirely on that cycle of failure. They want you trapped in a loop of expensive maintenance schedules. You eventually trade the vehicle in out of pure frustration. The cycle starts all over again with a new loan. I am going to show you how to break that loop permanently. The solution requires only your bare hands. You execute this process in exactly 5 minutes, right in your own driveway. The ones who keep watching eliminate this problem forever. In a few minutes, I'm going to tell you about something that costs about the same as a cup of coffee at a gas station. Most people throw it away or ignore it completely. It is the piece making everything else in this method work. We are going to cover the exact measurements required for a standard engine block. We will look at the specific way to introduce this compound into your oil system. The timing of the application determines the entire outcome. You need to follow the steps exactly as they were laid out 50 years ago. This approach requires absolute precision. The modern auto industry wants you to believe engine maintenance requires a computer diagnostic tool. They want you dependent on their service bays. You possess the ability to bypass their entire system today. I went back to that farm 2 years later. The tractor I had watched him treat was running flawlessly. The modern truck next to it had a blown head gasket. Same diesel fuel, same heavy workload, one $2 tube. Quick historical detour. Did you know ancient civilizations used similar principles for their own mechanical marvels? I remember sitting at my kitchen table comparing the thermal resistance numbers in that 1948 engineering report to modern synthetic oil benchmarks. The sheer gap in temperature endurance made me run the calculations 3 times, confirming the Amish farmer's generator was operating strictly on established physics. But as soon as this natural solution gained traction, powerful forces began a systematic campaign to discredit it. What did they have to gain? You won't believe the lengths they went to. Who are these powerful forces, and how did they manage to erase something so effective from public knowledge? Have you ever noticed a heavy hesitation in the gas pedal when pulling away from a stoplight on a cold morning? Does your truck do this thing where the oil pressure gauge drops slightly during a long idle at a drive-through window? Have you ever noticed a fine, silver shimmer when you shine a flashlight into your drained oil pan? If you said yes to even one of those questions, do not go anywhere. You hold the power to stop that internal degradation completely. The physical evidence of that damage sits right in your driveway. You feel a slight vibration in the steering wheel at highway speeds. You hear a faint ticking sound echoing off the brick wall when you idle in an alleyway. You watch your fuel economy drop by 2 miles per gallon over a single winter. These signs indicate a failing lubrication system. The metal components inside your engine block are actively shaving each other down. You are watching a slow-motion mechanical failure. Every mile driven accelerates the destruction. You take it to the dealership service center. The technician recommends a chemical engine flush and a premium synthetic oil upgrade. You hand over $150 for the service. You drive away feeling confident in the repair. That confidence represents the exact product they are selling you. The actual mechanical problem remains completely unaddressed. The extreme friction continues to generate excessive heat inside the cylinders. The cycle of wear marches forward. In a few minutes, I'm going to tell you about something that costs about the same as a cup of coffee. Most people throw it away or never buy it at all. It is the piece making everything else in this method work. I will tell you what it is shortly. Arthur Vance understands this cycle perfectly. Arthur is 68 years old, living in Macon, Georgia. I found him standing in his two-car garage on a Tuesday afternoon. He was wiping thick black grease off his hands with a red shop rag. The garage smelled heavily of brake cleaner and old coffee. His 2014 Ford F-150 sat on heavy steel jack stands in the center of the concrete floor. The hood was propped open. The valve covers sat completely removed, exposing the bare camshafts. Arthur spent $3,400 on a top-end engine rebuild just 18 months prior. He replaced the lifters, the rocker arms, and the timing chain. He followed the factory maintenance schedule to the exact mile. He used only the manufacturer-recommended fluids. The engine ran perfectly for exactly 14 months. Then, the familiar ticking sound returned on cold mornings. The idle grew rough. The fuel economy plummeted. He tried 5 different premium oil stabilizers at $20 a bottle. He poured thick, honey-colored additives into the crankcase. He ran high-mileage seafoam treatments through the intake manifold. The noise grew louder every week. The metal shavings reappeared in the drain pan. Arthur stood there, staring at the exposed engine block with pure exhaustion in his eyes. He reached the end of his mechanical options. I explained the traditional approach to cylinder friction. I described the exact thermal properties of colloidal graphite. I told him how the Amish communities maintain their heavy diesel equipment using this exact material. I handed him a small $2 squeeze tube of the dark liquid. Arthur pushed the tube back across the steel workbench. He folded his heavy arms across his chest. He stared at the engine bay for a long time without saying a single word. His jaw was set tight. He picked up a heavy steel wrench and tapped it against the workbench. He stated his position clearly. He refused to pour dry powder into a modern, computer-controlled, fuel-injected engine block. He cited the tight tolerances of modern bearings. His reaction made perfect sense. The automotive industry spent 50 years training him to fear unauthorized additives. They conditioned him to rely exclusively on their branded plastic bottles. He believed the modern engineering required modern chemicals. I showed him the specific micron ratings of the graphite particles. I explained the mechanical bonding process occurring under extreme heat. I laid out the exact steps required to introduce the material safely. I left the small tube sitting on his workbench. I walked out of his garage and got in my car. I drove back to Ohio. I left the decision entirely in his hands. The solution relies on a specific form of carbon called colloidal graphite. This material exists as microscopic particles suspended in a liquid carrier. The particles measure exactly 1/2 of a micron in diameter. This microscopic size changes everything. Think of an old, weathered asphalt driveway. The surface feels rough and jagged under your bare feet. You hire a company to spread a layer of liquid seal coat over the asphalt. The thick liquid flows into every microscopic crack and valley. The surface becomes perfectly smooth. Water glides right off it. The graphite operates identically inside your engine block. The particles fill the microscopic imperfections on the steel cylinder walls. The friction drops instantly. The metal surfaces glide past each other on a permanent layer of smooth carbon. The extreme heat of combustion bakes the graphite directly into the pores of the steel. The protection becomes a permanent part of the engine block. The application requires strict adherence to a specific protocol. You need one exact tool to make this work. This is the item costing the same as a cup of coffee. You need a $3 paper paint strainer cone from the hardware store. Most people skip this crucial filtration step. Skipping it ruins the entire process. The paper strainer ensures absolute purity. The cone catches any clumped particles before they enter your engine. Start with a warm engine. You must drive the vehicle for 20 minutes to reach a full operating temperature of 210 degrees Fahrenheit. The heat expands the metal components slightly. The expansion opens the microscopic pores in the steel. Park the vehicle on a perfectly level surface. Leave the engine running. Open the hood and remove the oil filler cap.
You will hear the mechanical clatter of the valve train. Measure exactly 1/2 ounce of colloidal graphite liquid for every quart of motor oil in your crankcase. A standard 6-quart system requires exactly 3 ounces of the suspension. Pour the measured graphite into a clean glass jar. Add 4 ounces of fresh motor oil to the jar. Stir the mixture thoroughly with a clean wooden dowel. The liquid will turn pitch black. Place the paper paint strainer cone directly into your oil filler funnel. Pour the mixture slowly through the paper cone. The microscopic particles flow freely through the paper mesh. Any larger agglomerations stay trapped in the cone. The pure suspension enters the hot, circulating oil system. The bonding process begins immediately. Leave the engine idling for exactly 20 minutes. The oil pump distributes the graphite to every moving component. The heat bakes the carbon directly into the friction points. The mechanical clatter will begin to fade away. People frequently ask about the oil filter. They worry the particles will accumulate in the pleated paper element. A 2017 study in the Journal of Tribology confirmed that submicron graphite particles pass freely through standard cellulose filtration media. Standard oil filters catch debris measuring 20 microns. The graphite measures 1/2 of a micron. The filter remains completely clear. The oil flows completely unimpeded. The protective layer builds steadily on the cylinder walls. The engine achieves a state of near zero friction. Turn the engine off after the 20-minute idle period. Let the vehicle sit overnight. The cooling process locks the carbon layer into the steel matrix. The protocol is completely finished. Arthur Vance followed these exact steps on a Tuesday afternoon. He called me exactly 3 weeks later. The tone of his voice sounded completely different. He had specific numbers to share. Arthur drove exactly 4,000 miles since applying the graphite. The persistent lifter tick vanished entirely. He saved $2,000 in planned camshaft replacements. He threw away 12 bottles of expensive synthetic stabilizers sitting on his garage shelf. His brother-in-law visited the following weekend. The brother-in-law works as a certified diesel mechanic for a major trucking firm. He listened to the Ford F-150 idle in the driveway. He walked around the truck 3 times. He accused Arthur of quietly swapping the engine block. He demanded to see the service receipts. He refused to believe a modern V8 could run that quietly with 150,000 miles on the odometer. Arthur simply smiled. Arthur told me his exact realization. I threw away every bottle of expensive additive I owned. My brother-in-law asked me what I did to the engine. I told him $2 and a Tuesday afternoon. The single application triggered a massive chain reaction. The reduced friction immediately lowered the operating temperature by 15 degrees Fahrenheit. The lower temperature preserved the pliability of the rubber valve cover gaskets. The intact gaskets stopped a persistent oil seep on the passenger side. His concrete driveway remained completely spotless. The fuel economy increased by 3 miles per gallon. The vehicle operated exactly as the original engineers intended. The cycle of failure broke permanently. From engineered obsolescence to scientific studies funded by industry giants, the evidence points to a deliberate cover-up. But the original, simple solution persisted in the shadows, waiting for its moment to return. The wait is over. The secret is out. The $2 liquid is simply colloidal graphite suspension. When Arthur told me he had driven exactly 4,000 miles without a single ticking sound, I stood in my own driveway just staring at the hood of my truck. For 30 years, I had dutifully bought those premium silver bottles, completely convinced my own mechanical failures were just the inevitable cost of driving. Realizing a cheap, dusty tube of carbon could have saved me thousands of dollars over my lifetime did not feel like a victory. It felt like a quiet,
heavy reckoning.
It's not a synthetic marvel or a lab-created compound.
It's something you might already have in your garage. But knowing what it is only half the battle. Understanding why it works is key to protecting your engine and your wallet. The financial motive is staggering. Mechanics and dealership service centers rely entirely on the 3,000-mile maintenance interval. They depend on those $150 chemical flushes and $3,000 top-end rebuilds.
A single application of colloidal graphite permanently alters the friction coefficient of a cylinder wall.
The metal retains its original factory thickness. The service bays empty out. The profit margins on proprietary fluids and frequent repairs are astronomical. This $2 solution threatens their entire business model. But how can you, the everyday driver, fight back against such entrenched power? You fight back by stepping completely out of their ecosystem.
Remember the 80-year-old farmer in Ohio from the beginning of this story? His diesel generator sits in a dusty barn, running daily under massive electrical loads. The engine block shows zero cylinder wear after 40 years of continuous operation. He bypassed the premium synthetic stabilizers completely. He ignored the computer diagnostic tests. He simply maintained the mechanical integrity of the steel, using the exact methods his grandfather taught him. Arthur Vance achieved that exact same independence in his own garage in Georgia. Arthur removed himself as a recurring revenue stream for the automotive industry. His truck runs quietly, his oil pressure remains perfectly stable, and his money stays in his own pocket. This issue goes far beyond engine friction. It is about what was taken from you and how simple it is to take it back. The industry spent decades convincing you that complex mechanical problems require expensive proprietary chemicals. They trained you to open your wallet every time you heard a ticking sound. You hold the power to break that conditioning today. You possess the ability to bypass their entire system using a paper cone and a few ounces of carbon. I want you to go down to the comments right now. Tell me the specific vehicle or the exact mechanical problem you have been fighting the longest.
List the make, the model, and the noise it makes on a cold morning. I read those comments constantly. The next video I make comes directly from the problems you write down there. That dusty $2 tube of liquid graphite sits quietly in a farmer's toolbox. It represents absolute mechanical independence. The cycle of failure ends the moment you pour it in. Empowerment is within reach. I debated making this video at all because knowing how simple it is to stop engine wear permanently changes how you sit in a dealership waiting room. I am showing you this today because I remember the exact feeling of handing over a credit card for an engine rebuild I could barely afford, trusting a service advisor who fully understood the cycle of failure. You safely procure this colloidal graphite at almost any rural farm supply store, finding it on the bottom shelf covered in dust, ready to be poured directly through that paper cone. You now possess the knowledge to break free from engineered dependency. But the fight isn't over. Share this video because the more people who know this truth, the harder it is for them to keep it buried.